Master Gardener since 2022, and I would like to welcome you to Grow Your Own. Our presenters today are Sam Guardiola and Barkat Chadania. And before I bring Sam and BC out, I have a few announcements. Our last class for the year is August the 9th, Full Season Vegetables and Herbs. You don't want to miss that. There are other classes being offered, Landscape Success. These are virtual classes, and the next classes would be on June 27th, Tree Care Basics, August the 22nd, Winter Protection. And now I'd like to introduce Sam and BC. Sam Guardiola has been a Fort Bend County Master Gardener volunteer since 2011, and he has advanced training in composting. In addition to composting, he also raises red wiggly worms. Oh. For his day job, he works in financial services and lives in Houston with his wife and 2 rescue puppies. Now, Sam.
Thank you. And
BC.
BC.
Would you like to introduce yourself?
No, it's okay.
No, go ahead.
I've been a professional orthopedic surgeon long time ago, retired, and I did this Fort Bend Master Gardener with Marina. Marina was my classmate, and when we finished that, and after that there was a possibility or opportunity of doing the composting, so I joined that. Sam is very senior composter since 2011. I only did it 2 years ago. So here we are. Go ahead, Sam.
Well, thank you everybody for coming this morning. We have a couple displays up here, and I want to encourage you to walk up during the presentation, or we'll pause in the middle, or you can come up afterwards. One is like a tumbler presentation, and then I wasn't sure if the weather was going to hold up or not, so I brought that as compost out of my tumbler at home, so you can come up and take a look at it. But I think the weather, they just told me that it's pretty sunny outside, so we can maybe go outside and look at our demonstration gardens, and we'll talk about that, and you can see that. And then I have the worms in the blue bucket, which we'll go over later on. So we'll get started. So this is our other partner, Clarence Gray. He's not here. He is also an advanced trained composter, and this is one of the slides that he puts up, and just the curiosity and willingness to learn. You know, he talks about that this is a Rudyard Kipling quote, but you know, that's one of the things that we like to do in Master Gardeners, just help people understand, and so that, you know, they have questions that they're experiencing in their home, and how do you do it, what do you do, and so we hopefully will share that with you. The AgriLife Extension Earthkind program, so this incorporates elements of that, reducing fertilizers, yard waste, energy conservation, and water conservation. So that's one of the things we're trying to promote with what we're going to teach today. So we'll talk about composting. How does it happen? One of the, as you know, composting, everything alive falls off and eventually dies off the trees or anything that we're eating, and it degrades. Well, it doesn't pile up. It you know, degrades over time. Other bugs, organisms come and eat that, and so it's just a life cycle of how everything works, and it happens pretty naturally. Otherwise, our forest would be full of like big piles of leaves and trees and, you know, dead animals. So what is composting? It's a natural process. Happens every day in the forest, as I mentioned. You don't have to do anything, but if you do add some elements to the composting process, you can speed it up, and then you can recycle this material and put it in your plants, and to help you with either your turf, your lawn, your flowers, your vegetables, and this is everything that your plants need. It's really helps with water retention, soil conservation, and as well as temperature regulations. And if you guys also, I failed to mention, if you have any questions, just raise your hand and let me know. We'll try to address anything as we go. So what is composting? There's we talked about the way that composting happens naturally. If you're not adding any type of effort to it, you're not turning your pile, you're not adding water or air when you turn the pile, you're not adding carbon materials or nitrogen, that's going to be what's called a cold composting. So that would happen in your natural forest. You're not doing anything to it. It's an aerobic activity or anaerobic activity. So but if you're actually turning the pile and you're adding water, if it gets too dry, if it's too wet, you're adding more carbon material. You're increasing the temperature, and you're turning everything. That's a hot composting method, and that's going to happen a lot faster than something that's breaking down over time on its own. So what we have is hot composting, which you can get a hot compost. You can do that method in about 3 to 6 months. Cold composting, where you're not doing anything, probably takes about 6 months to a year, right? It'll take that long for things to decompose and break down. So one of the things that happens in the pile, right, is you got fungi, bacteria, invaders. They're coming in, eating, so in the compost pile, we may have like food scraps, banana peels, other organisms come and eat on that. And then larger organisms come and eat on those. They die off and they decompose. And so it's just a life cycle of what's going on in the pile, right? And so you have to have oxygen, otherwise it'll get smelly. So as you get in there and turn your pile, that's what keeps that pile from smelling a little rank. And many of you have ever composted in your home and you get kind of unnatural, not a good smell. Anybody? Yeah.
Mine smells good.
Well, you're doing it right. Yeah. So if you ignore it for a little while, it'll compact on itself. It'll start to smell a little bit. You got to get in there and turn it. Whenever it rains, right? So you want to add that rainwater to the pile, turn it. If it hasn't rained, like it has been lately, you might spray it with a little bit of garden hose and just wet the pile. So the compost, what you're looking for is that finished product, right? That humus product. It's rich, it's crumbly, it's moist, it's not wet. In this orange bucket here, I have that's compost that I made out of my tumbler, and I probably gathered it out. I think about a month ago. But if you touch it right now, it's still moist. It's not dry. It's been sitting in that bucket, and I just kind of use it as I need it for the plants and stuff. But that's the one thing. It's like good, rich compost. It's supposed to feel moist to the touch. It's not going to be like dry, like really dried out material, and it's not going to be wet either, right? If you squeeze it in, it's like wet, like drippy, or you get moisture, then it's too wet. You need to mix in some carbon materials. So this is your finished product, right? It's very dark. It's crumbly. It looks, it's going to help with soil retention and regulation on temperature, and it's organic. So it's going to give the plant roots everything that they need. So why do we compost? I mean, you can buy compost for your plants. I think I've been to Costco and seen you can buy they have these big bags of they have little bags of vermicompost, right? Or you can buy big bags of yards of compost. That's going to be anywhere from, I think it's like $5 to $24. So it's like, if you can do this at your home with stuff you have around your home, we're encouraging you to, make your own, right? You're recycling, you're reusing stuff that you're already, you have in your home. Or you can buy it, but definitely you want to, use what you got. So these are just some of the numbers on what's in the landfills, right? So they think that if they were to go in a landfill, about 24% of the materials in a landfill is compostable, right? Some of it's organic, it's paper, it's cardboard, it could be recycled. $250 million is spent on collecting and decomposing compost. You think about the gas that goes in the trucks, you think about the trucks, you think about the salaries for the people that drive these trucks, the land that they put that they fill up on the landfills, all that expense goes into composting in a landfill. So these are just, if you do it yourself, you can help reduce some of that cost. So rather than throw them away, you can use them, create it in your home. They're expensive for taxpayers, we kind of talked about that. The land is wasted, and so if we're just throwing these materials in a landfill, right, nobody's out there turning it, nobody's, correcting the elements of like 30% carbon materials or 30% nitrogen materials, 60% carbon. So it's going to be an anaerobic activity. It's going to produce methane, right? Which is, we don't want that. And there's methane emissions. But if you do it right, then you see some of these places, these big compost windrows where they get in and turn the piles. They're actively managing the pile, adding materials to it, and so you get the finished product. That's really the way to do it. Or you can do it in your home. Landfill contents, we talked about that a little bit. 40% of it's paper, 24% is food waste. You have plastic and materials, but of the paper and food products, that's 60%, 64%, 2/3 of the materials going into landfills is composting. That could be yard scraps, stuff that we're from our kitchens that we're throwing away, plants that aren't diseased that we're throwing away. I think about the yard man that comes and cuts yards down my street. They bag up their grass clippings, put them on the curb, and somebody comes and picks them up and throws them away, right? But those grass clippings are things that could be used for your compost piles. So, do we want to help the climate? All right. So, 24% of landfills are organic materials. 40% is paper, carbon, timber, things that could be broken down and are compostable. But it's basically all organic material. It's an aerobic process, right? So the lady told us that she composts her piles, smells great. If you have a good compost pile, we'll take you outside and show you our tumblers and our bins. They don't smell if you walk up to them. I've had a lot of people talk to us about, they start a compost pile, they're not doing something right, they're not sure what it is, it smells. Maybe they're not burying stuff so it gets insects or it gets rodents that are crawling on the pile. It maybe get a lot of ants. Well, that could be from they're not turning the pile, they're not burying their food scraps. Other critters are coming there at night looking for something to eat. And so, but if you do it right, all the elements of like burying the pile, turning it, keeping it moist, keeping it buried, it's not going to smell. And when you turn it right, you're adding oxygen to that pile. So it's very clean, and it's something that you can do in your landscape that it looks perfectly normal in the backyard. If it ends up being like just a big pile that smells or is messy, then you're doing something wrong, right? And we need to tweak something. The benefits of using compost. So we talked about soil improvement, right? It helps with water retention. You're going to have increased microbial activity for the plant roots. It's going to help with erosion. It'll help with the pH content of your soil. So if you have a real acidic soil, you add compost to it, it'll normalize it, bring it back down to about a 5 water retention we talked about, and it'll obviously help keep all those scraps and items in our landfills, right? And we're not paying for that expense. Is there any questions? Okay. So one of the things, I have a couple books that we use for composting. Whenever we do the training, and I'll pass these around, is the Rodale Book of Composting. This is like one of the things that all advanced trained master gardeners are given, and we buy this, and this is like where they teach you everything. And then there's a couple more books that I've just picked up along the way, and I'll pass those around. Y'all can look at them. There's a gentleman here that has, I guess it was a 2020 guide for Texas composting. Yeah, that one right there. He found that on Amazon. So, you know, a lot of the elements are the same, right? I think what you're looking for is you can find YouTube videos, you can find books on Amazon. The thing is, the process is pretty simple. You want to make sure that you have your ratios right for composting. So one of these slides that we'll get into is the ratios, right? And so whenever I started my very first pile, it got smelly, and that was because I had a lot of green, but I didn't have enough carbon, right? But I didn't know that at the time. It was my first pile. And so one of the, what you have to do is figure out, it's just an eyeball test, right? You have to look at it, and 30% or a quarter of it needs to be your green materials, and about 3/4 of it needs to be carbon materials. So does everybody know what I mean when I say carbon and green materials? Green is anything that was once alive, right? Plant scraps, cuttings, kitchen waste, and then carbon materials is cardboard, paper, wood chips, stuff like that. And usually you want to make them as small as you can so that they help break down a little bit faster. So you could throw a bunch of branches in your compost pile. It's going to take forever to break down. So, we had a wood chipper whenever we had big limbs and stuff that we were putting in our pile. But like I have newspaper up here that I use for my worms. One of the things that I do with the paper, rather than putting the whole sheets in there, is I rip it up and then I wet it so that it's smaller. It'll help with the worms. They'll get in there and eat it, and it'll help break it down. So just always think about, even grass clippings, when you put them in there, you might want to run over them with the mower, right? And then get in there and mulch them a little bit, make them smaller, get the food scraps as small as you can. Food scrap lawn clippings for your greens, twigs, brown paper, cardboard, and timber. The one thing that you can get a lot of, if you don't know that, is coffee grounds. So if you go to Starbucks, they'll give you their coffee grounds. Coffee grounds, even though they're brown, they are considered a nitrogen. They are a green. So, did you have a question? Yes.
So sometimes folks recommend using an organic fertilizer like Captain Jack's or Earth Grow or something like that, and toss in a handful in the middle and mixing it in there to kind of jumpstart with the.
Yep.
What do you think about that?
Yeah, no, I've done it before, and I've also done it for years without it.
Okay.
So if you can buy a compost starter, or they call them compost starters, or if you have a compost pile, just take a handful of that or a shovel full of that and throw it into your pile that you just built, and you can just help that, right? So that's going to help with the nutrients. There's going to be microscopic fungi, bacteria, pill bugs, there's going to be worms in there, stuff like that. All you're doing is jump starting that process. If you don't, they're already in there anyway, and microscopic items that you can't see. Eventually, if you're putting the right food materials in there, bugs and insects will go in there looking for a food source. So yes, I think the answer to your question is, yeah, you can, but you don't have to.
Okay, just sometimes my compost piles stop. They just stop cooking. They just hang out there. So I was wondering.
When you say it stops cooking, it's not heating up, or
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So that could be that maybe the ratio is not right. So maybe you don't have enough green decomposing in there. So maybe get in there and turn it, add some greens, bury it. And so you just kind of got to watch that ratio.
Yep.
And when I say the ratio, right, it's like, there's nothing, you're eyeballing it, right? And there's nothing really to tell you like, oh yeah, this is not enough or whatever. Just one day it'll just start breaking down and it'll heat up. I have a compost thermometer, which I forgot today. It's about that long, and you can stick it in there. But what you're reading, what you're looking for is you're looking for that compost pile to heat up to about 130 degrees, which when you stick your hand in it, it's not going to burn you, right? But you can tell that it's hot and it's breaking down and it's decomposing. So that heat that comes from the organisms that are eating the nitrogen, that are breaking down, they're dying, and then other items are eating them. And so that's where that heat is. Whenever it slows down, that means that there's no more nitrogen, nothing's eating anything. So you gotta mix it up again.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, sure. So, moisture. So make sure that you're in your compost pile, you're adding water. It could be rainwater. It could be from your garden hose. It could be from your, if you have a bin that you collect rainwater from off of your house. I've even heard of people if they have a jug of lemonade, right? You don't want a lemonade with a bunch of sugar in there or but if you have cucumber water or something like that, you're not going to drink it or whatever, you can throw that in there, right? Don't throw soda with the sweetener or stuff like that in there, but I know people have done that before. But you definitely want to keep your pile moist. Oxygen is going to come from air, right, where you're getting in there and you're turning it. If you got a tumbler, right, then you're tumbling that pile, right, you're rotating it. If you have a trash can, you want to kick it over, just roll it around on the ground, you mix it up, get the air in there, and then stand it back up. However you got to do it. Or if you have a bin like we have out here, you'll get a shovel, get in there and turn the pile. You want to talk about the heat, the temperatures?
Yes, let me back up, I suppose,
Sure.
a little bit. Compost is free and it helps. There's two major things. One is the fact that hello, can you hear me? No.
You want this one?
No, it's okay. It's okay. That's right. Composting is a natural process. If you go to forest, you will find the surface where you walk on is kind of a spring. It just bounces up and down. The reason is that all the organic matter, every day the leaves fall down, the critters die in there, and things are happening. Life and death kind of situations that keeps on happening. which you don't see every day, but it is happening. And that is what the forest floor is. And that floor becomes springy because it's a kind of a, jumping. Compost is a natural process. We must all do it. It's our duty. It's incumbent upon us that we do it. I don't know why we don't do it on a regular basis, but we should. In fact, people have started taking it on themselves to create a commercial entities out of it. There is a curb to compost. Have you heard of it? There is a lady here in Sugarland who has started, I think it's almost a year and a half ago. She gives you buckets and collects it every week or every 2 weeks, depending on what is the size of your kitchen waste. And she composts it and she gives it back to you as well. And there's a literature available for that. Anyway, on one hand, we are wasting our money throwing it into the landfills, and the landfill is costly. Arrangement of taking our kitchen waste and all the waste to the landfill is not easy, expensive. After putting it there, we create methane out of it, unfortunately, because it just keeps on adding on top of each other, and there is no oxygen, hence it creates methane. And methane is climate issue. All of you know, it's the kind of, the issue that we are presently facing with the climate is what it is. A lot of flooding, a lot of rain, a lot of this, a lot of that, a lot of heat. But all this can be avoided, prevented, if we can perhaps take care of our own on what we are doing. I think every municipality, some of the municipalities in United States do it, by the way. Sugarland started doing it about 15, 20 years ago, but stopped it for whatever reason. But I think every municipality should do it, and every person should do it on themselves. And it's not difficult. For example, this lady has done it on a commercial basis, but everyone can do it. What do you need for that? A compost bin, or leave alone. I mean, I started it like this. I was attending, there's a place called Sugarland Garden Club. Sugarland Garden Club meets at the, near the Imperial Sugar Factory. It's a very large place, I can't remember the name. But it's on the Avenue 7, I think, or Street 7. There was a lady, and she was taking everyone to her garden, to her own backyard, which is very large. She had about 10 different bins, whatever she got. I mean, the waste paper bin, or waste baskets, or big pots, or whatever. And she will start putting things in there. And that is all the compost there is. And she really creates a lot of compost. So it's not necessary that you have to have a particular way of doing the thing. If it is more organized, like the Sam is showing it here, it's wonderful. We have got outside for your demonstration. We are doing it on a regular basis. There are 2 or 3 waste bins, in fact, compost bins. So if you can do it in a more formal way, wonderful. If you can't, just a big pot will do. You start collecting things in that, and the important thing, I think, that as the lady said, is the important thing is the combination of green versus carbon. Green versus carbon is about 65% we need of that. And if we can keep that, I think we can keep away all the smell, and we can have produced nice sort of fertilizer kind of a thing, which is soil. It's not fertilizer, it's a soil. It smells nice as well, by the way. What Sam showed you earlier, if you smell it, it smells like normal. I mean, there's no odor of the kind which is offensive. So I think it's pretty important. Temperature-wise, as Sam was mentioning, we have to have a higher temperature so that all the critters die, or the bacteria die. And temperature about 120, 130, even it can go up to 140. More green, higher the temperature. More carbon, lower the temperature. That's how it goes, basically. So if you put, if there is a lot of odor, which we were talking about earlier, put some paper in there, and the water will just go away within a day or two. And if this is not warm enough, it's not hot enough, well, just put some kitchen waste more and less of carbon. Is there any other question, Sam? Do we? Definitely depends on the pipe size. Yes. So if it is at times, in fact, it is so hot that it may catch fire. It has been seen that it catches fire, but then it's not kind of a really risk of the kind that fire is a risk. But factually, it may have to go higher in temperature for all our risk to be negated in terms of bacteria and the critters.
Yeah, thank you. So the
Sorry.
Quick question. Sunlight versus shade, which contributes more to the process?
Basically what you need is kind of warmer temperature in the compost bin or whatever you're composting in. So sunlight will help, unless it is every day going to 110, 115. That's something different. But I think it's good that temperature should be maintained more than 120 if possible. And as Sam said, there are thermometers available. I've got one which I keep on using it every so often. You just push it in and you will find it.
It's a regular
Yes.
thermometer.
Long rod of thermometer.
Yeah, you can find the compost thermometers on Amazon, Walmart. They look like big brisket thermometers. Is what they look like. They're about that big, and I think when I bought mine, they were like $14. Now they're probably like 27 or something like that. Of course, but you stick it in there. They're kind of neat, but you really don't have to have one. You can just kind of touch it, and it'll feel warm, right, but not hot. Now piles have gotten so big, so you see at some of these compost businesses off the freeways and stuff like that. Their piles are so big. Maybe they do get hot enough where I've seen where in the news where they caught on fire, but most of the piles that we're going to do in our backyards or in our property, they won't get that hot where they'll catch on fire unless something else is going on. But it's pretty safe. Now the question I've never really noticed if sun or shade made a difference for me. I mean, I built a compost pile against my fence, which faces south, so it's shaded right where the sun comes in. I've had no problems there, and then I've got a couple of tumblers against my house, which will kind of lead me to another thing I wanted to mention to you guys. Against my house, and they're full sun. They're no problem. But the one thing I'll bring up on that point is wherever you decide to compost in your house, make sure it's convenient for you, right? So don't put it where, like I have it right now, where I go right out my back door, I turn to the right, and there are my tumblers alongside part of my house. It's convenient for me. When it was against my fence on facing south, it was still convenient. I mean, I don't have a huge yard, but it was just not right outside the door. So it was easy for me to get out there, put stuff in the tumbler, get it going, and do whatever. Whenever it was against the other side of the fence and I had to walk through there, and if it rained, it was muddy, or it was just hot, and I don't want to carry it out there. So, just make it to where it's convenient for you, right? And I think it's just like anything. It's got to be easy so that you'll do it. If it's not, then, So, if your pile, right? So we'll talk about if it's dry and it's cool, you might have too much carbon in your pile, right? You might have too much wood chips, dead grass, paper. So you might need to add a little bit of nitrogen to heat it up. If it's hot, smelly, or if it's not really, it's not really right. Maybe you need to add more carbon. So you just kind of got to play with it just to understand how to troubleshoot it. If it's wet and smelly, you need to get in there and turn it, add some air to the pile, maybe some moisture to jumpstart everything again.
Well, we've got a question.
Sure.
Actually, there's several questions. I started my power outside I started my pile in May 20.
Okay.
And I already had issues with it. At the beginning, I don't have a thermometer, but I felt like whenever I turn it, I feel the heat coming. But after the second week, I started noticing the temperature going down, and I started seeing maggots, and then it started raining in KT area the last 2 weeks, 2 or 3 days every week, and it started getting wet. And so I didn't know what do I need to add, and I boil it. I don't know, do I need now clean or dry? How often, when should I stop adding my food scraps? When should I stop adding green? Or, like just to let it go. At the beginning, I was turning it every day and then I stopped. I just turn it once a week now. But then I wanted also to buy worms and I don't know, can they live at that temperature? Do I have to? Which kind of worms? I looked online and there are several kinds.
Yes. So a couple of questions. So you said this was a tumbler, right?
No. I just piled it and
Just a pile. Okay.
I didn't use any. I wanted just to start it as easy as possible and less expensive.
Okay.
As much as possible.
So if it's just a pile, I would say, if you turn it once a week, that's probably about what we turn ours out here, unless there's extra people working. So that's pretty good, actually. You can turn it every couple of days, but if you don't turn it for, let's say you go on vacation and then you come back and you got stuff to do, so you don't turn it for 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks, it's still going to be okay. Just as long as you get in there. Now, the pile, like you mentioned, it will stop heating up and it will go cold. So you do need to get in there and turn the pile again, mix it up, add some more carbon. Because as that pile breaks down and decomposes, it'll start to shrink and so you're losing mass. So you want to keep adding to it, burying your scraps, right? So I think that's question number one. So you're okay with turning it once a week. Your other question was?
And the wetness from rain, what do you do with it?
If it rains on it, so right now, like we all have, if you have a compost pile, everything's pretty wet, but it's only wet on the top because what's happening is that pile is compacting, and so it's not really soaking into the middle. I bet if you stick your hand in the middle of that pile, it's pretty dry. So I would just get a shovel and turn it, rotate it. Anything on the outside is wet. And so like I keep doing this gesture, and what I mean is you want to take everything on the outside and put it on the inside, and then everything that was on the outside, cover it up on the outside. So you're kind of turning the pile like that. Also, whenever you're adding nitrogen, leaves, plants, whatever, salad, you kind of want to dig I always dig like a volcano hole, put all your food in there, and then turn it and bury it, right? Because you don't want fruit flies, you don't want animals coming through at night looking for something to eat, so you want to bury it, keep the smell away, keep fruit flies from laying eggs on it. So definitely about once a week, and if it rains and it gets wet, if it's not wet enough, you can spray it with a hose, right? But
So it's okay to keep adding? It's okay?
to a pile, yes, definitely you can keep adding. Now, if you only have one pile, you can do that. If you, what we're going to show you out here is we have 4 compost bins, and which goes to the theory is that we're building a pile, right? And so once that pile is finally built and to how we want it, big enough, we're gonna stop adding to it. We're gonna start letting that pile that we build, we're gonna start letting it break down and cook. And then we'll start a new pile. So a second pile, we're now adding to it, and we're building, and then we're letting the one pile cook. When the second pile is done and we're ready to let that one cook, we'll start a third pile. The first pile that we built should be broken down and it's ready to use. So you got one that you're using, that you started first, the second one that you started second, that you're cooking, and then the third pile that you're building. So what that translates to in the home, if you don't have the space or enough to build 3 bins at home in your landscape, you can have like 3 tumblers, and that's exactly what I have. Is I have a tumbler, and then I have one that I built. So I have the same concept, right? One that I'm building, a pile, one that I'm cooking in, and then one that I'm using in. So anyway. So, and what was your third question?
Is maggots okay? Maggots, seeing maggots.
No, that's not normal, right? So I think as you turn it and the pile heats up, you're gonna discourage like ants, maggots, stuff like that. Now you will have some grubs, you'll have worms, you'll have some things that are gonna go there because that's where the food is. They're gonna go there to eat. But like maggots, that's not normal. So that, I think as you get in there and turn it right, you'll discourage that type of activity and gathering of those insects and creatures. Yeah.
If you put it in the ground and you compost real good and cover it, you're not going to have maggots because the flies can't get to the fluid.
That's right. That's right. And then you had a fourth question: what type of worms should you add? So, what website were you looking at?
Just Amazon, Google. I found some people that specialize in red worm, but it's only for the food scraps at home, like in a plastic, not for the pile out there.
Yeah. So the worms that
I think we need to explain that worm composting that you are talking about, putting worm into the compost, it's a different thing. And I think Sam is going to explain it in a fairly explicable way, in a way that you'll show you. See, he's got a larger, in fact longer presentation about worm composting itself. Until now, it was all about the compost bin.
Yep.
Right?
Yep, that's correct. So, depending on where you're purchasing your worms, so the worms that are in the bin that I'll show you guys a little bit later, those are red wigglers. And they're little bitty worms. They're probably about 3 or 4 inches long, and they're very skinny. They like being like us, right? They like being in 70-degree temperature, 75. They like being moist. They like where you feed them. So they're happy to live in a bucket. And if you take them outside, it'll be too hot. They'll probably dry out and die. They're not very big, so they really can't burrow down. If you have a pile outside, then what you're going to look for is a night crawler, something that's bigger, thicker, that's going to dig down about 5 feet deep, and it's going to come up during the night to eat, look for food scraps, and then when it's hot during the day, they're going to go down. So night crawlers is what you're looking for. If you're going to vermicompost indoors, I would get a red wiggler.
Normally you see red wigglers and night crawlers way in the bottom of the compost because they don't like hot. They don't like hot, and they don't like light either.
Right. Which I have my flashlight, and I'll show you that a little bit later too. So whenever we harvest the worms, I usually put like a headlamp on, or I have a flashlight, and that's how you get the vermicompost mix, right? The castings is they don't like the light. I have the headlight on my head, and then I'm just kind of scraping through the castings, and the worms are going to go away from the light. So it's kind of neat.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Any more questions? Okay. Do's and don'ts. So turn the pile, obviously. You want to add the air, you want to add moisture to it. But the other thing is like if you're putting in your kitchen scraps in there, you don't want to add anything that has had like, if you're adding salad, leftover salad, you don't want to add anything that's been in dressing. If you're adding pasta to it, if it's got oil or sauce on it, don't add it to it. So same thing with meat. You don't want to add any meats to it. Now, the compost businesses on the side of the freeway, their piles are big enough. They can add meats to theirs. It will break down. But for what we're doing in our landscape, it's not going to get hot enough. It's probably going to attract rodents. Probably your HOA will send you a letter. Don't add meats. Don't let the pile go dry. Keep it moist. Keep turning it. Issues and solutions. So we talked about meat, dairy, oil, no fats in your pile. Don't get it too wet, right? If it gets too wet, then you want to add some carbon, some air, and turn the pile. If you add too much green, a bunch of food scraps, stuff breaking down, it's going to get smelly. So it's really just kind of you got to do it right, and it's got to work. But if it doesn't work, there's all kinds of reasons why it could not be working right. So you just got to keep an eye on it. Just I like to say if you're growing tomatoes, you're out there looking for bugs every morning. If you're looking for stink bugs, you're looking for the caterpillars, you're checking your carrots or whatever. Same thing with the compost pile. Just take a look at it every day and see what's going on in there, because don't ignore it, right? It's not a trash pile. It's definitely something you want to keep an eye on. Yes.
You're talking about adding paper, but does it matter if it's got colored? I mean, you don't want to use colored ink and like magazine paper, right? You just want like newspaper, that kind of thing.
That's a good question. So magazine ink, so the glossy, you don't want to add that, right? That's not gonna break down as quickly. It might have the residue on it, but the colored inks from like newspapers, that's all soy based now, so you can add that. I remember, I've never done it, but I remember whenever we took the training for us, they told us that if you were unsure, that you could strike a match and light the paper on fire, and light the paper on fire, and if it like burns green, I think it was, that's how you know it wasn't soy based, right? But it's like, okay, well, I'm just going to take your word for it that everything's safe now. So I think most of the newspapers that have the color print, they're fine. But yes, no, you don't want to put glossies in there. The other thing, if you're putting newspapers in there, like I mentioned earlier with the grass clippings, mulch, just rip your paper up. So now anymore with everything, people receive like e-bills, and you get your emails for your phones and stuff like that, and you have apps. But before, when I used to get a bunch of paper bills, I was used to shred them, and then I'd put the bills in my compost pile, so they would break down. I know nobody's going to go digging through my pile looking to steal my identity, but anymore, it's like you're always looking for sources of nitrogen and carbon. And so I work, as I mentioned, I work in financial industries. So I just go to the kitchen and just grab like a bunch of Wall Street Journals every week from the leftovers, and I take those home and put them in my worm bins and my compost piles. You can't hardly, I don't ever see the Chronicle anymore at like the 7-Elevens or something. So I don't know where everybody else gets their newspapers from these days, but yeah, it's easy for me because I still have access to the Wall Street Journal.
So when do you know your compost is ready? You can check pH or you can check the temperature too?
Yeah. Yep. Now, you were talking about the pH for compost?
Yeah, I have it, compost needs to be between, best is 7 to a little higher than 7.
Yeah. Yeah, so so just like you can do a soil test, you can send your compost and to A&M and to
You can get a little a meter,
Yep.
pH meter, and you can check it. But the best thing to do is check it in the middle of the compost. That way you know it's compost good.
That's
Right?
correct. Right. That's right. That's how you know it's finished. That's how you know it's ready. If you want to go that far, right? So, or you just keep on. I mean, it's a constant process, right? So even whatever is not finished, it's
Or you could just
scraps
say,
are too big.
or you could say, well, there's been 6 months been there, and maybe that's going to be composted by that time.
Right. Yeah. So anything that you're not sure of, right? You just keep recycling. And so our pile out here, we have a screener. So any scraps that are too big that don't fit through the screener, we just add them back to the pile, right? We just keep it until it's going until you can't tell anymore. Y'all can come up and look at this compost, right? So that I made. This is like, it's just small enough. I mean, it almost looks like a soil, right? It's just very. But anything that doesn't fit through my screener just goes right back in the pile in the tumbler.
Sam,
Yes.
you're talking about worm castings being a great fertilizer to add to compost or your garden. What about compost or manure from chickens, cows?
Yep.
Good.
Yeah. No. Chicken manure, cow manure is all good stuff. So cows and chickens, they're gonna eat organic grass, right? So
There's a lot of nitrogen in it.
yes. So one thing you want to be careful of is anything that eats meat, right? So no cat manure, no dog manure, but cows, chicken,
Horses not so much.
horses not so much. They get
Grains.
Yep, they get grains, and plus they get injected
Right.
for performance. So we eat cows and we eat chickens. So the thought being is that there's nothing injected into those animals that is dangerous to us. So yeah, that's straight out of my tumbler. And I got to tell you, when I first got the tumbler, I didn't love it, right? Because so there's a trick to tumblers that I didn't know is when I got a tumbler, I was constantly filling it up, and so every time I filled it up, I restarted that ratio, right? So remember we talked about for the compost to break down, you got to have that 20, 25, 65 ratio. Well, every time I added more kitchen scraps to it, I was resetting it. So I only had the one tumbler, and so I was throwing off that ratio, and so it was either too wet, too moist. I wasn't turning it enough, and then I figured it out. Well, okay, I need to stop adding to it. So just like the piles outside, I need to stop and get a second tumbler or build a bin and start composting in there and let this one cook and just turn it and add water to it. And once I did that, it was like, oh, okay, I figured it out. That's how it works. But yeah, that's the one thing you got to know. Like when that bin is about 3/4 full, stop. Just turn it and add water, but stop adding carbon and nitrogen to it.
Okay, the question that we had is, if you added grass clippings, okay, what if you've done like weed feed? You shouldn't put that on those grass clippings onto your compost pile, right?
If
Or
you-
should there be a time limit? You'll add it later, like after a certain time.
What was the question?
Yeah, if you put weed and feed on your grass,
Oh.
and then clip your grass,
So I'll give two answers to that, right? So if you're gonna add, the question was, is what if you put weed and feed on your grass clippings? Should you add that to your compost pile? And I'll say, if you're adding that compost, that finished compost to your turf, to your landscape, you're never gonna add it to your vegetables or you're just gonna add it to your flour, something you're never gonna eat, that's probably okay, right? But it's not gonna get hot enough, remember that 140 degrees, it's not gonna get hot enough to kill anything that you're putting in there, right? So that, for the same reason why we talked about when the neighbors get their grass cut, I don't know what the neighbors are putting on their grass, so I don't go pick up their yard clippings because I don't know. But if you're adding it to your vegetable garden, then I wouldn't put that in there. Then I would substitute kitchen scraps, coffee grounds, you know, anything you can. For my other green, I wouldn't use, if they're doing the weed and feed, I wouldn't put that in there.
The other thing is on my husband's doing is, we've got like, because Tumblr really didn't work for us. So we have 3 small trash cans, probably a little bigger than that one, or about the same size as that one.
Mhm.
With holes in the side because we heard that. And so what we do is we put it into one, we start filling into one, and then, when that one is full, then we start adding to the next empty one. Yeah. So then we add to the second one, and then we take the stuff from the first one and dump it into the second one to be what we use to cover.
Yeah.
And then my husband actually should add leaves. Once I started adding the leaves a lot, I'm just on the sprinkle it on the top when I put stuff out there buried. Then we started seeing a lot of the earthworms. We didn't have as many earthworms in our compost until we started adding the leaves on top, just to pick the stuff off the ground. And that has really rocked me. I'm sick of it because I see them underneath. And if I see one in the yard, I toss it.
Yeah. So this is a demo of a compost pile tumbler that we saw at Missouri City Green, and we replicated it here. Clarence got one of the people out there to build us one, and so you can see that you can do a compost pile in a trash can bin. Right now, what I would do if you were doing this type at home, get a lid that'll stay on, and put some holes in the side of it for your air, right? And you want to get a lid that stays on because once you fill this pile up, you're going to kick it over and throw it in your yard a little bit and tumble it, add air or whatever. But if the lid doesn't stay on and it falls off, that's not good either. So, but you can see this is, this is a good cutaway of how everything looks. You want to put some dry materials in there. You want to make sure you've got your green materials, so carbon, nitrogen. It's a good mix. We'll run through it because I think we're running out of time. No foul odors, so if you're doing it right, it should not smell. You should not have any issues with that. If it does, probably too much green. If the pile's cold, you don't have enough green, it's just not going to smell. It's good now. It may turn anaerobic, but probably not enough green. Pests, if it's buried, if your green materials are buried, you're going to have fruit flies. You're going to have rodents in there, raccoons looking for a meal. Layering or you want to bury the scraps. We talked about that. Just make sure you keep it off the top. And if it's taking too long, maybe you're not doing enough turning of the activity. The pile's too dry, it's too wet. The ratios are off. So these are all, you see the theme here, right? You got to add air. Whenever you turn it, you got to add water, moisture, and then make sure your carbon and your nitrogen ratio. So it's really, really pretty easy once you get started. In the beginning, you may struggle with it a little bit, but just keep tweaking it, right? And you'll get it right. And then just some of the reference materials that we have. I think we passed around the books. So the Rodale Book of Composting, and then Grow Compost. That's another reference that we have that we use some of the materials out of. So if I know some of y'all saw the compost pile. If y'all want to take a trip out to the compost bins, we'll do that real quick. Then we'll come back and talk about worms. Yes?
I would imagine this is good stuff once it's done, right?
Mhm.
What pests can I expect after I start using this compost?
What pests? So, you shouldn't get any, right?
Can you repeat it?
Sure.
So,
So her question was, what pests can she expect if she starts using this? So this, you saw it, right? It's clean, it's kind of moist, and this has been in this bucket with this lid on for, I think about a month. So there's nothing living in there, there's no pests or anything. There's no bugs crawling around in there. So it should be fine. Sure. Oh, let's at after the second one. So we'll run out there. We'll talk about the compost bins and let you see it. Then we'll come in here and do worms.
You can see here, these are the 2 cooking bins. I got them labeled. But the way we build these out is these have these boards that you can take out so that you can get in there and actually turn the pile. So as we're adding stuff and building the pile, right, it's easy just to throw it in through the top. But once it starts cooking, then this is a big pile, right? And we got to get in there and turn it. So you just lift this and you just turn your pile, you're adding air, you're adding moisture, and it's breaking down. And this, you can, if you touch it, it's you can feel it's moist, but it's not sopping wet, right? It's almost like a wet sponge that you wring out, so you can tell that it's moist to the touch, but it's not going to get you mud.
Is it done now? Is it ready?
It's cooking. It's almost done. Yeah.
It's almost cooked.
Yep. So there's probably a good bit of it in the middle that is ready to use, but
It's so quite okay.
yeah, no, it looks good.
So,
And then,
I have
yes.
a question. So can you use the part that's ready?
Yeah.
Or okay, and then
Yeah,
you just okay.
Yeah, you just keep
And you mix the
recycling it.
rest.
Yep, mixing it up. Now one of these,
It's an ongoing process basically.
you
And
see
it
here,
takes,
I talked about
as
the screen.
Sam explained, it may take 6 months to a year. And it is more cooking.
So what we have is we built a screener, right? And so I put this over a wheelbarrow, or you could just throw it over your pile. And anything that fits through is probably small enough and it's ready to use. Anything that doesn't, like some of this stuff is going to be obviously too big, that would just go right back in the pile, recycle it, and we're just going to keep letting it break down and keep building. Now, this is pretty big. If you're doing this at home, you might take some shears or a machete and cut it up and help it break it down a little bit smaller, but you don't have to. It's it's all about how much effort do you want to put into it, how much money do you want to spend. And then, so cooking, building, and then this pile here, well, there's no pile. This one's empty. So, but one of these would normally be compost that we're using. So this one is empty. So pretty soon this will be the one that we start building. This one we're building up. This one will go to cooking, and those are that first one looks almost pretty done. So
I did on my backyard. I just put it on the ground.
yeah,
I don't put anything.
that's fine. So one of the things that I do, I have a raised bed, and so I put cinder blocks in my raised bed, and I quarter my raised bed, right? And so I compost in quarters. And so one of the things that I do is I'll compost there, and then whenever the seed growing season's over, I'll move it to the next quarter of the raised bed, and then that compost is broken down over the growing season. So in the fall, then you could start mixing it into your soil. It's finished, it's ready to use. You don't have to move it and shovel it anywhere. You just build it somewhere else in the raised bed. So that's exactly what she said. It's just a kind of another way to do it. Same thing with trench composting. You can go in your raised bed and dig a hole and just throw all your scraps and stuff like that in the hole, let it break down. And they call it trench composting, and you just you know, the next season or that current season you don't grow right there. The next season, once it's broken down and finished, then you can grow in that area.
Is that something you would do when you're fallowing, when you're doing fallow in that particular race?
And then I realized you guys got to get on with your Saturday. So, so in addition to composting, you can vermicompost, and that is where you're in the process of raising worms. And what you're going after is their castings, right? So the casting is just like the humus that you're getting from compost, and you can buy a bag of it. I think I've seen them anywhere from $15 on up to $25, like a 2-pound bag. But you can make it, and it's pretty gratifying to raise worms. And any time that I open this up and like tell kids like, hey, do you want to come look at the worms? They're like, yes. They love it. So, same concept with vermicomposting, earth kind process, right? And so that we talked about earlier with composting. The worms that you want to grow indoors in a bucket, they're going to be the Icinia fetida, or what the common name is red wiggler. They don't mind being handled. They're very small. I think we talked about they're probably about 3 to 4 inches long, and I think some of you already saw them. They're very skinny, right? So they're not going to burrow deep. They don't mind being in this bucket where it's moist, where we're feeding them. They've got the temperature's regulated. It's not too hot, not too cold. That's where they love being. They're not going to try to escape. So I keep this in my laundry room, right, and under some shelving. They don't try to get out. In fact, I have this lid off. You can see they're not crawling out, right? So they're exactly happy where all their elements are right. So one of the things that they'll do is when I feed them, they'll go in there and they'll break down. So I give my worms a lot of banana peels, a lot of strawberries, blueberries. I was telling one couple that I don't give them anything citrus, so the acidic on the citrus, their bodies don't like that. I don't give them watermelon, anything that's real moist. I don't give my worms that, and I don't give them onions. So they pretty much get like salads, green beans, strawberries, blueberries, and I think that's about it. Bananas. They love bananas.
Potatoes.
You can give them potatoes. Yep. So what do we talk about? We're teaching. What do we do? What are the benefits of it? Recycling to children. They love it. It's important for the environment, and we're showing how to recycle and reuse in the ecosystem, and we're reducing what we're throwing into the landfills. Some important things to know about worms is they don't have any bones, they don't have any teeth, no arms, no legs, and their bodies are moist. And so if they don't have any teeth, right, how do they eat? Somebody was asking me, I don't remember who, was asking me about eggshells. Do we put eggshells in the worm bin? You were. And when I take eggshells, we can add it to our compost pile. So I would probably rinse out an eggshell, throw it in my sink, let it dry out. But if I'm adding eggshells to my worm bin, I will rinse them out, and then I'll put them in a plastic bag, and then I'll pulverize them with a hammer or a rolling pin. Just get it really smaller, and that helps the worms, as they're eating the materials, the bananas or whatever, that helps them move everything through their digestive system because there's that grit that they can use. Their blood is red, and the worms have 5 hearts. They are both male and female, so they, whenever they're both capable of laying eggs and fertilizing the eggs. So They both have this organ right here, the clitellum, is about 2/3 of the way down the body of the earthworm. Any worm that finally has a clitellum that you can see means that the worm is ready to reproduce. It is able to reproduce. It's mature enough. So they have a gizzard, right? They put their food through. Talks about the blood system and how they get it. So this is very similar to the compost. What do you feed my worms in your compost bin? Same thing with the worms, right? They love all these things up here, right? You can give them apples, you can give them cabbage, pears, eggshells, pineapples, cantaloupes, all kinds of stuff. They love strawberries, right? What can't you give them? Same thing you can't put in your compost pile. No meats, no dog manures, nothing that had food on it. So you can give worms pasta. I don't really give my worms pasta. But if your pasta's been, if you drizzle a little bit of olive oil on it or any sauce, don't put that in there, right? Their bodies aren't going to like that. Nothing with margarine, mayonnaise, dressing, and no colored or glossy paper. Now, I used to build my bedding for my worms out of newspaper, right? Wall Street Journal we talked about. They have colored ink. That's okay. They don't mind that. If I were to take this, then I would take my paper and to create their bedding, I would rip it up into shreds like this, and then I would soak it in a bucket full of water and get it moist so that they can operate in, and that's how they would live. Recently, I've stopped doing the newspaper and I've been using these coconut core bricks. And so these bricks are pretty neat in that one of these, it usually takes about 2 of these to fill a bucket like this. But you put the brick in 5-gallon bucket, fill it up with water, it'll start dissolving and you break it up. And then that is what they live in. Right? You can get these on, I think I bought this for like $13. I remember when I started raising worms, it was like $4. So, how much, it's like composting, right? How expensive do you want it to be? Do you want to do it with stuff you have around your house? If you have access to paper, you can do it out of newspaper. You don't have to buy the coconut core bricks, but they'll live. They're perfectly happy in paper, wet, moist paper, or the coconut. Now, same thing with compost pile. You don't want fruit flies, so you want to bury any food that you're giving them. So I've got bananas, strawberries in there, and I'll kind of dig a hole and I'll bury it. Now, if you look at this bin, I kind of marked one corner of it so that I know, like, I feed them clockwise typically. So when I start feeding them, I'll start here, and I just remember, like, okay, I fed them here last time, so now I need to go to this corner and feed them, and then the next time I feed them, I'll go there. So the worms are going to follow the food, and what you don't, it doesn't matter, but what I try to do is simplify it so that when I harvest, I'm not grabbing a bunch of worms, right? I want them to follow the food. If I know that the last time I fed them was over in this corner and it's time to start harvesting, then I'm going to dig out everywhere else where the worms shouldn't be, right? They're not going to be over in this corner eating if there's a bunch of banana peels and stuff over there. So it's just something to make your life easier. Yes? 10:30. Oh, okay. We'll wrap up. So let me. So the long story short is what you're looking for is red wigglers. You can find them online. You can probably get about 100 worms for about $23. You can get them at PetSmart, as I mentioned. You can get a dozen for like $4 at PetSmart. I haven't had a lot of success, and I bought them like 2 different times from 2 different stores. I don't know if that was
by design or what. I tried it just to be, to give them another shot. I just didn't have a luck with them. But Earthworm Jim, I think there's a lady, there's a couple businesses in Houston that sell red wigglers that I've seen. I just randomly stumbled across them. But red wiggler is what you're looking for. Let me get over to, so the other thing with the worm buckets, you can see here I've got it in this container, right? It just can't be opaque because they are sensitive to light. So we talked about I put a light on my head whenever I harvest. I usually will lay out like a trash bag, and I'll put the castings on top of the bag, turn the light on, and start going through the worm castings to keep the worms away. They'll go away from the light, but the worms will they'll clump together, right? And then on my lid, I just cut out a hole, right? And then I taped down the screen to keep the bugs out, and it's got duct tape. So that's really it. I mean, worms is pretty fun. And you can, something that you can do. There's what they look like when they clump together. But real important. So right now you can see I have this crumpled up piece of paper. It's moist. You want to cover it up with a solid sheet. So this one needs a replacement sheet. So that's just to keep the fruit flies off of it.
You have to take them out of there and put them somewhere else? You got too many of them in there?
Yeah, so I've actually got 3 buckets. So I probably, they will reproduce very quickly. So I give some away. Some of them, they just die off. But yeah, no, they're constantly like, you get too many pretty quickly.
How long they will live? For 2 years or a year?
I don't really know because they just reproduce all the time. I mean, there was one slide in here that talks about 2 worms. They can produce you can get 96 eggs, cocoons in 1 year. So that was a pound of 1 worm probably when I started, I don't know, about a year ago or whatever. So, but here's the survey. Thank you everybody for coming. I'll be around for more questions if you have.